We will begin. Let's do a little music to properly attune us. This is a song, a tune from an Israeli singer, songwriter, musician named Shivi Keller, who performs under the name Ein Od Milvado. It's kind of his band, or his and himself, maybe. That, by the way, that band name means there is none else besides God. Ein Od Milvado, which is a pretty great name for a band. לא נראה ולא נפחד, כי השם אלוקינו השם אחד. לא נראה ולא נפחד, לא נראה ולא נפחד, כי השם אלוקינו השם אחד. היי 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 היי. כי השם אלוקינו השם אחד. לא נראה ולא נפחד, לא נראה ולא נפחד, כי השם אלוקינו השם אחד. We will not be afraid, we will not fear, because the Lord our God is one. Amen. We are on the bottom of page 90/91. We concluded the second section last time. Please God, with God's help, we're going to get through the third section today. And very, very brief review. We have to put all of our energy and all of our passion and power, shalom, Jacob, into our prayers. And if you remember back to 2 weeks ago, we said specifically into the letters, the tevot, the letters of our prayers. We talked about what does prayer mean. That can mean your visceral prayers, your visceral connection, the specific words of the liturgy. Prayer is life force. Prayer is also emunah, faith, belief, trust. We then said, I think that was essentially part Aleph. Good. And then part Bet, the second part, which we did, we started 2 weeks ago and concluded last week, was this notion of that our prayers are connected. Each tribe had its own language of prayer and its own gate for prayer, and that the process of the energy of prayer and connection, it sort of radiates up to the heavens and then back down, giving energy to the things in our lives that need energy. Our sustenance, food, money, relationships, job, life, friends, everything. And then a central metaphor or a central lens that Rabbi Nachman uses is the notion of splitting the Red Sea and finding a marriage partner. Both are equated with this form of prayer and tefillah. The Red Sea has 12 lanes, etc. When we pray, we are affecting supernal unions in the heavens, and that causes unions down here on earth. There was this whole thing about mateh, bed, mita, staff of life is bread. Bed also is union. There was north-south we talked about. And then we concluded talking about Yaakov, who was the father of the 12 tribes, who is sort of the root, who was able to bring all the 12 together in this beautiful connection with the conclusion of the book of Genesis, that Yaakov gathered up his feet into the mitah. Feet was prayer. Mitah was the tribes. All the prayer goes all together. And then we concluded by saying that Yaakov gave Joseph an extra portion, Shechem being Shin, Kaf, Mem, which was Shafel, Kochav, Malach, lowly star angel, and that all this happens through the power of prayer. So at this point, Rabbi Nachman has told us nothing, just some light things, namely that all of life depends on prayer and emunah, and you have to put all of your energy into those things, and it will cycle up and then cycle back down. So the question that's going to lead into today's learning is, if it's that straightforward, then all we have to do is pray, whether it's the standard liturgical prayer or prayer in our own words and voice, as long as we mean it and have deep intention and put energy into the words, the whole thing should work very well. But it's not so simple, because prayer is not so simple, and being able to maintain this intentional prayer life and spiritual life can be very difficult, and Rabbi Nachman now is going to tell us a little bit about why that might be, and then try to show us how we make it through that. Let's begin. Bottom of page 90, 91. But when a person stands up to pray, he is beset by external thoughts and klipot, husks, which surround him on all sides. Now let's for a second talk about this word klipot, husks. The word klipot is a central, and klipa, which is its singular, is a central idea in Kabbalistic mystical thought. A klipa literally means a husk, or the peel of something. So if you think about a fruit or a nut, which you take the fruit out of a shell or a peel, you're removing the klipat, the Hebrew verb until today. Liklof is to peel something. So a klipa is the peel. What does that mean? It doesn't, generally what would we say, it doesn't have any value, kind of. It protects that which has value, or it surrounds, and you have to get through it. The way it's used in mystical literature is to say that klipa is that which is empty, it's of no value, but it has even more of a negative connotation. It has a bit of almost an evil connotation. It's kind of the dark matter, or the dark energy of the world.
You'd say like a cult just means hidden, but it kind of has that connotation of like...
What was the word?
Occult. Like the word occult just means
to hide. The occult.
Right, it just means like to hide something, but it has a connotation of like sinister.
Oh, that sounds like a fantastic... Does occult come from the word?
Yeah, like occlusion is just...
Occlusion is that which is hidden. Yeah. That seems exactly right on.
Yeah.
Now, I love that. And that same... It seems to me, like what you just said, Jesse, is that that word, both klipa and occult, which seems to be right, can sort of hold two meanings. One is sort of, when Rabbi Nachman uses the word klipa, he seems to have two possible things it can mean. And to him, it seems they're both true. One is, a klipa can be something that is self-generated. So what's an example? If I one day say, I don't want to get out of bed, I just want to watch TV all day and eat Cheetos in bed, I could say, that's me being lazy, and that's me that's like my own kind of klipa-dicka, kind of klipa-esque, my own stuff, kind of just like blocking me from doing what I really should be doing that day. That's one sort of klipa. It's your own internal issues that you have that get in the way, and we all have our own klipa and etc. But another idea of klipa, and this is more the like sinister side, is Rebbe Nachman also believes, and this is not just him, that it's part of this mystical, that klipa is something external to you. It is a real force in the world that can externally affect you negatively. This relates to Kabbalistic notions of how the world was formed, that there was that there was light coming into the world couldn't fully hold that, so there was a breaking. This is a fundamental theory of creation, which we won't get fully into, but that at that instant when the world couldn't hold all of the light, there was a breaking that happened, and there's sparks of light that become diffuse through the world, through the ether, but there's also klipa, there's also negative, dark force which manifests in the world, and we can in our life, by doing good, we can rectify, we can raise up sparks, we can also, in a sense, bring more light into the world, but also through our actions we can also create klipotes. We can further that process in the world. So when we talk about these, you should think about both, and there's, I think, maybe in all of our lives, maybe you've had your own experiences of one or both of those meanings of klipa, so we should be able to think about all of those. So Rabbi Nachman is saying you get up to pray and you're beset by machshavot zarot, external thoughts, uklipot. So now, machshavot zarot also can be both of those things. You get up to pray and you start thinking about, okay, right after I'm done praying, I'm going to do the laundry, and I have to go to the bank, and I can't believe that conversation. Okay, that's one thing that can happen. That's internal. That's your own, that you have to get better at concentrating and focusing. And that's from what he talked about from the very beginning, putting your deepest energy into prayer. But then there's also a notion that someone who's able, to meditate fantastically, or able to put all of their kavanah, all their intention into davening, into prayer, there can be an external negative energy force which kind of seeps in and causes there to be foreign thoughts. Both of those, either or both, can happen. So then what happens? It surrounds you. V'nishar b'choshech ve'en yochol hitpalel. You're left in the dark, unable to pray. Kamosha Katuv, and now he quotes a verse from Lamentations. Sakota ve'anan lach me'avor tefillah. I put this on the source sheet. It's number 22. Lamentations, this section of Eicha of Lamentations is several verses describing the distance that the Israelites felt from God following the destruction of the temple. They felt that God had clothed God's self in anger and had attacked them. And then alternately, they felt that God had clothed God's self in a cloud, such that prayer, tefillah, could not penetrate. Now, we could think about that verse. It's interesting. Does that mean that it's an interesting image that God is obscured by a cloud? Say, klipot is definitely another, same idea. There's some obscuring, there's some occlusion. There's also a dark light metaphor. Because Rabbi Nachman said, you remain in the dark. And then he uses a verse which indicates cloud covering a sun. And as we continue on in this part of the passage, there's a lot light, dark, the light and darkness binary will travel through it. So there's klipa versus expansiveness, there's light versus dark, there's sun and cloud. Mm-hmm. So that's all happening here. Mm-hmm. And then he'll add another layer. So now we're on page 92/93, which should be on the back. Uchtiv saviv rishaim yithalachun. And now he quotes now from Psalms. This is number 23. And it's the second part of it. The wicked go round on every side. That which is exalted is degraded by the sons of man. Now, I included on your source sheet, if you look at source 23, I included So right, this is from Psalms chapter 12, and he is citing verse 9, okay? Psalms 12:9. But if you were to look at all of chapter 12 of Psalms, I think it's important to have a little context, because earlier in the chapter of Psalms, it's talking about men, people, humans, predilection for lying. Okay? And the word used to open for lying is shav. Shav can either mean lying or speaking vainly. Not vainly meaning
self-aggrandizing.
Not self-aggrandizing, but lying. Speak like we say.
Like loose with the facts or something?
Loose with the facts, not caring about the facts, or sort of speaking like we would say, like sicha betela, conversation that's meaningless, it's pointless. Shav. We're gonna care about that word again soon, and I think he cares about that, so I put it here. Why does he bring that here? Sheharishaim, hainu haklipot misavavinoto. So Psalms chapter 12 says the wicked are around you, but then he says the wicked, i.e. the klipot, surround a person. So now here's another level of meaning. This klipot, these negative forces, are also equated to lying humans. So there's a notion in which just falsity and lies, actual, literal lying, when people lie, but also this energy of falsehood. Again, all these levels are happening simultaneously. So that's also darkness. Because then he quotes from that same verse, Krum Zulut. That's that which is exalted is degraded. That's from the same line in Psalms. What is that which is exalted? He wants to say prayer. That's standing in prayer. For prayer, he quotes from somewhere else in the Talmud, which I didn't cite on the source sheet. For prayer stands at the very summit of the universe. So what did he just do there? Again, it's so dense. He said there's a Talmudic passage which says the summit of the universe is prayer. He sees that there's a line in Psalms which says that lies degrade that which is exalted. We already know that which is exalted is prayer. So lying degrades prayer, which he uses as another level of meaning to relate to this notion that when you're in prayer, there's klipot, negative energy, which is actively trying to degrade your prayer, to influence it, to occlude it. Yes? Mm-hmm. To darken it. So there's all these layers. What's darkening it? It's your own stuff in your own head. It's this negative force. It's lies. It's distance from God or not being able to see God. It's darkness. All that's happening. So now we're in a dark spot to be in. There's all these multiple things that can get in the way of your relationship with God. And I think many of us, I can relate to this in my own life in various ways. Certainly, we talked about a couple weeks ago that King David had times where he could relate to this. Clearly, Rabbi Nachman had times in his own life where he wouldn't be talking about it. So if we paused right there, this would be a sort of upsetting and pessimistic place. But Rabbi Nachman believes, knows, and wants us to know and understand that there's a way out of that.
I think that could be seen in the lives of the kings in the Bible. You look at King Saul; he never got away from that darkness.
Oh, one of the better examples, probably.
And you got somebody like David, who was as a young boy with his harp, tending the sheep, praising God. He knew how to press through to that. And then Saul, later in his kingship, would get David to come and to play, to rid the demons, if you will.
Absolutely, and you're right. Saul, in a sense, Saul struggled with that his entire life until the end of his life. Mm-hmm. That's a great example.
And he even went all the way overboard toward the end of his life when he went and talked to the witch of Endor. Mm-hmm. That was the ultimate depravity.
Very good. He allowed it to overwhelm him. Mm-hmm. Vida, no, from Yodea, Lidat.
Is there an exclamation point with Vada? You
Not in my text, but you can imagine. But yes.
Yes, okay.
The answer is yes. Vida. Sheyesh pitachim harbe b'choshech hazeh. Let's say l'sham, misham. There are many openings in this darkness from which to exit, which is, it's such a hopeful and beautiful idea. And different people need different ones. Different people relate to different ones, or you in your own life will need different ones throughout your life. And now he's going to tell. How do we know this? Kamosha Amru Chachamenu, as the sages of blessed memory said, and he now quotes from the Talmud Masechet Yoma, which by the way deals with the holiday of Yom Kippur. Here's what the Talmud says: Haba litame potchin lo. This is number 24 on your sheet. Someone who wishes to impurify themselves, they open before him the opportunity to do as he wants. And someone who wants to ba lehitaher misayen oto, someone who comes to purify themselves, they too are given the opportunity. Now, I want to this is a little complicated, but I want to try to draw your attention to what Rabbi Nachman does here. It's very subtle. The Talmudic, if you look at source 24, and I'm realizing I didn't give you the full English translation, but just follow what I'm going to tell you here. The statement in the Talmud says as follows: someone who wants to be mitame, which means impurify yourself, potchin lo, they open for him, which means in its context that if a person wants to do something bad, God is going to give them the opportunity to do something bad. Okay? But then the second part of it is haba litaher, but someone who wants to purify themselves, misayen oto. Not only will they God let him, God will help him purify himself. So the Talmudic passage on itself says, basically, we have free will. You want to do something bad, you're going to be able to. You want to do something good, you're going to be able to. But God will give you extra help on that scale to do better. Okay?
So it does when it's to impurify, it doesn't say he'll help. It's just a one
different words. For the impurify, it's potchin, poteach, to open. For litaher, it's misaye, to help. So different verbs. Okay, now, that's what it says in context. Rabbi Nachman reads it a little against its grain. He only focuses on the first phrase, and he says, the one who comes to impurify themselves, potchin lo, they open for him, which again in its context meant they'll open for him opportunities to sin. But he's saying the one who comes to impurify themselves, even that person, potchin lo, there are openings for that person, even in sinning. So this is, I would say, this is a very generous and optimistic view of human life, that even in sin, there's ways out of that.
A case in point that comes to mind, if I'm understanding correctly, would be Hashem showing up to Cain and says, look, you got to master this thing. Sin lieth at the door. God steps in to help him out, and he still murders Abel.
Yeah, that's nice. Right. Cain didn't do tshuva. Cain hadn't said, you know what, I want to do better. Maybe he does that later in his life, maybe. But at that point, no. But there was still an opportunity for him to get a way out, which he did not take advantage of. Very nice.
So, I mean, not to debate syntax, but I mean, is it so much optimistic as it is the way of the world? You know, William Blake said, the fool who persists in his folly becomes wise. And it's this notion that, you know, when I would get Legos as a kid, they came with instructions. And if I followed the instructions, I was rewarded with this grand castle within as quick as I could build it. But I'm Italian. I threw those instructions out the window. You know, it took me a while through error and trial, maybe 2 or 3 weeks of finally looking or whatever. but it's the idea of trial and error in some sense, right? But this is on a spiritual level, right? So this isn't Legos. And so maybe in that sense it does seem generous of God, or maybe it just seems that God is, that's his, again, his all-knowingness. He knows, our brains and our limitations, and that we are going to make these errors. And so he's letting you know, look, you can do wrong, but, no matter when you come, there'll be more opportunity for you to do right, and I'll help you in that instance. And I guess, again, it's the same thing my dad said. Good people do bad things, and bad people do good things. It's not what you do that defines you, but what you do about what you have done. And I find in a similar sense, that's kind of like what God's saying. He kind of, again, he just picks up on our nature.
Very nice. Whether you use the Lego directions or not, you should be blessed. Okay, very beautiful. So, there are many openings for a person. We see that even in darkness, there are many openings through which to leave. That's directly coming from what we just said that Rabbi Nachman was claiming, which is, while you're in the darkness, there are openings. It's a little counterintuitive. So you might think, no, I have to first claw my way out of the darkness. I have to sort of maybe God will meet you halfway there. This says, no, God will meet you in the darkness. So, but now what's the problem is even if you accept that sort of more optimistic read, there's still a problem. Aval ha'adam hu iver. A person is blind. Ve'ein yodea limtso ha'petach. So he raised the stakes of optimism, but then he raises the stakes of pessimism. Because you say, oh, I'm in the darkness, but there's a way out. Oh! But even you're in the darkness and you're blind. So you don't even know necessarily that there are ways out in the darkness. So now we need help. So now, okay, we're in the darkness because there's klipa surrounding us. Klipa can be darkness between your relationship and God. It can be based on lies. It can be based on negative energy. It can be internal thoughts in your own mind. But there's a way out. I know I want to take advantage of that way out, but I don't even know how to find the ways out. So how do we start to find out, to know what the ways out are? Vida! No! Clearly this, I say it like that because I understand him to be speaking passionately right now.
Yeah.
Because this is real. Because this is real. Vida! Sha'al yadei emet zocha limtso hapetach. A person merits finding the opening through truth.
Through God.
We're going to have to see what he means by truth. At this point, could mean God. It could mean, we said that one of the problem is lies. So you counteract lies by truth telling. Let's see what he'll clarify a bit. Ki ikar or hameir hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For the main light that illuminates the openings is God. Kamosh Katuv, as it is written, Hashem Ori V'ishi. God is my light and my help. That is Psalms 27, which is a very central and important chapter of Psalms in the Jewish tradition. King David saying, who should I fear as long as I have God, who's my light and my salvation? V'al yedei sheker hu misaleket HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But lies cause God to misalek, literally, what's it say here? A person dismisses God. Misalek is like something flees. So if you're doing it, you're like, the vision I have is like shooing God away. There's like an active, God can't be present if you're lying. Those things can't coexist. And how do you know that? Kamosha Katuv, Lo tisa et shem Hashem l'shav. Do not swear falsely in the name of God, which is one of the 10 Commandments, which we're reading in shul this week.
That's amazing how this works. It's so weird.
A great 19th century Torah sage, the Chassam Sofer, said that if you're learning Torah and you find that the topic or what you're learning about starts talking about is related to what's happening, to sort of current events or things that are relevant to the time of year, that's an indicator that your learning is truly l'shem shamayim, which for the sake of heaven. That's which is a good thing. So this Torah that we're learning, the whole thing, if you remember, is based off a verse from last week's Torah reading, the splitting of the sea, which we read in synagogue, and now it connects with this week's reading. Don't take God's name in vain, which, by the way, in Jewish and rabbinic tradition, means a variety of things. It means don't lie in court as when you're testifying, but it can also mean don't say. There's a lot of things. Don't say blessings and don't invoke God's name when it's not warranted or when it's not the appropriate situation to make a bracha, to make a blessing. Rabbi Nachman seems to be using it to mean don't lie. Don't lie. Because lying and God don't come together. Don't go together well. There's an interesting question in Jewish thought of, is there a mitzvah called don't lie? Is that one of the 613? We all know it's wrong. No one's debating that. That's a pretty primary ethical idea. But is it one of the 613? And it actually seems to be that is not considered one of the 613. Where you can't do it, but it's not one of the 613. This one is one of the 613. But really, I think the main reason he's excited to use it is it has the word shav, that same word for lying that we mentioned earlier, which was in Psalms chapter 12, which he cites, though he doesn't cite that part of it. It was earlier in verse 3. So you've got this notion of shav, of vanity, of lying, of deceit. And that now we want God. God is light, but we expel that light. We expel God, as it were. We dismiss God, as it were, by falsity, by falsehood, by deceit, by shav. Ki al yedei shav misalek et HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because through falsehood one removes oneself from God. And then there's a proof text also from Psalms 101. Dover shkarim lo yikon neged einav. He that speaks falsely will not stand in my sight. So we don't like that. But what we do like, emet. Al yedei emet, but through truth, is bottom page 92, 93. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shochenimo. It's the opposite. You expel God / light through falsity, but God dwells with you through truth speaking. Kamosha Katuv, and this is a line which is said every day in Jewish prayer. It's from the Ashrei, which is Psalms 145. Karov Adonai l'chol korav l'chol asher yikra'uhu ve'emet. God is near to all who call him in truth.
Amen.
Now, what's so fascinating about this for me is I say this every day, and for me, it's always been about the first half of that phrase. Karov Hashem l'chol korav. God is close to all those who call God out. To the degree that I've thought deeply about this line, I've thought deeply about the first half. It's a very nice idea. If you call out to God, God is close to you. If you don't call out, God is not close to you. Why do I like that? It's about relation. You put yourself out there, God will be close. What I never focused on until Rabbi Nachman shows it, he says, no. It's really about the conclusion of that line. Karov Hashem l'chol korav l'chol asher yikra'uhu be'emet. It's really about doing it in truth. Yes, you have to call out to God, but God doesn't just come to any old sucker who calls out. You got to do it with emes, with truth. That's the key.
What does the scripture say? He inhabits the praises of his people. and to me, he would come where people lift him up, praise, the beginning of a whole lesson.
Yeah.
He comes and inhabits or dwells with
What
those
you
people.
allow that to, what you invoke. Same exact thing. And it has to be, we now learn, if we didn't already understand, through truth. Ukshakadosh Baruch Hu imo, and then once God is with you and you invoked that, you brought that light in through emes, through truth, who, God, me'ir will show you then God will show you how to get out of the darkness, which here it says disturbs him. The Hebrew is monea, which means prevents him. Bitfilato, in your prayer, kamosh katuv, Hashem ori, God is my light. So you will get to a stage of, quote, God is my light, once you trigger that by truth, by bringing truth in. Now, we still haven't exactly said, what does it mean to bring truth in? When I first started reading this, I said, it seemed to me like that on some base level, it just means make sure the words that come out of your mouth are truthful. Generally,
I have a little problem with that, though.
Yeah.
I can think of so many examples, like just, here's one, but I don't know. Like, Aaron was such a righteous person because the things he would say, he meets two, buddies who are grumbling and won't talk to each other. Oh, I just talked to so-and-so. He really wants to get back together. And, blah, blah, blah.
A peacemaker.
And that's just not the truth. He's saying something that's not the truth. But, that really brought God down into the camp. So what's truth? What's not truth?
Great question.
Okay, and I said the problem, I was a police officer, okay. You can't tell, it matters to me what your emotion is behind it. Sometimes you've got to tell people something that's not true to protect them. Mm-hmm. You just can't go tell, oh, by the way, here's the combination to the safe, so it's what your emotion is behind that. If it's, if it's sinful, yeah, okay, but if it's done to help them, and the children, you can't tell children everything, you got to sometimes till they get look. So sometimes you do it, actually, you don't tell them the truth to help them.
Those,
that's, I don't know if you know this, do you know why the Holy Spirit is depicted as a tongue on fire? Because the truth is hard to mouth. You can't, it's hard to keep in your mouth, it's hard to hear. But at the same sense, again, I said it earlier, I really do feel like God is truth. God is what's true, and God isn't, like you were saying, you can't tell little kids the truth. You've got to tell God the truth. You've got to stand naked in front of God.
Absolutely.
And be like, this is my sword. As rusty as it may be, this is what I got.
You don't sound like an agnostic when you say that.
Well, it depends on what you think an agnostic means.
So Matthew's answer is going to be, one possible answer is that Rabbi Nachman is specifically talking about speak truth in your relationship to God. Because both Jesse and Vincent, you're both right to note both examples from life and from the Torah. A great example in the Torah, and this is cited by the rabbis of the Talmud, that even God slightly changes the truth for the sake of peace, and specifically peace between Abraham and Sarah.
Hold on, so
that's a story.
That changes the idea of what truth is, does it not?
Well, it says that there.
So that's truth is not strict adherence to fact. It seems like that
could be one, or it could be that you have to speak the truth 99% of the time, and then there's exceptions when it's for the sake of peace or justice or understanding. That is a huge conversation that is discussed. There's a beautiful midrash. I don't want to get too far afield, but it seems very relevant, where before humans are to be created, all these groups of angels start banging on the office of God. And the first group of angels say, how can you create humans? They're going to, and the first group of angels, represent peace. And they say, how can you make humans? Humans are going to war. And God says, that's a good point. And then another group comes in, they represent truth. And how could you make humans? They're going to lie. And there's another group that comes in, they represent, I can't fully, compassion. These people won't be fully compassionate. How can you? And God looks at all of them and takes, of all the different groups, takes the group representing truth and throws it to the ground and says, and God, quoting from Tanakh, quotes a verse in Psalms which says, truth will sprout from the ground. So that's a story which understands how could truth come from the ground? Well, because God threw truth into ground. The idea being that humans, right, we're never going to have full access to truth. We have to work at it, but it doesn't come easy or natural, and that's something which has to grow. So those are different types of answers, but we can understand this locally, as you'll see, is he's going to focus a lot on, like Matthew said, truth in your relationship with God, and specifically the words of prayer. So now, here's what we're going to do now. Now, Rebbe Nachman is going to make a, not really a detour, but going to take us to a new spot, and he's going to take us through a close reading of Genesis chapter 6, verses 14 through 16, which is the commandment to Noah to build the ark. And at first glance, you might say, why?
To house the truth.
That's where it's going to get to. What have we also maybe seen so far in stuff Rabbi Nachman has said or alluded to, about, and that would make it somewhat more reasonable, or something sort of an allusion to why we would be bringing this idea of the ark at this point?
Is the ark like some kind of a husk or something like that? Like
Oh, that's nice.
That's like nature.
That's nice. That's nice. It's, in a sense, interesting, because usually klipa, it's about getting to what's inside it, and the teva, which is the ark, that's a sort of husk as protective,
Right.
which I like. Jacob.
Lack of solid ground by which to stand on and make a prayer. That's very honest.
Beautiful. Not what I was thinking of, but I think right on and true. I was going to say, recall that the opening line that this whole Torah is based on is the sea crashing down on the Egyptians and the depths of the sea.
Oh, right.
The depths swallow them up. So now we have a story about an ark which floated on the depths of the seas. A different time in human history, but also the depths of the sea. So we're in Genesis chapter 6, verse 14 to 17. Let's quickly read in the source sheet. It's number 28. Make yourself an ark. The word again for ark is teva, of gopher wood. Make it an ark with compartments, cover it inside and outside with pitch. And this is how you should make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. And then it's going to say, make a tsohar for daylight in the ark. Well, there's a reason I didn't translate that word tsohar. We'll do it in a second. And finish it, terminate it, within a cubit of the top. Put the entrance to the ark in its side, and make it with a bottom, second, and third deck, which is also an allusion to something we've already seen that he'll bring back again. Okay, now let's go to the top of page 94, 95 in your packet. We're moving well through this one. I'm loving it. So, here we go. Vizeh Perush. This is the explanation of Tsohar ta'aseh lateva. Make a tsohar for the ark. Now, already in the translation that you have, it says make a light for the ark. But here's the point. Peresh Rashi. Rashi, the classic 11th century commentator on the Torah, notes that when the Torah says, make a tsohar for the ark, it can mean one of two things. Yesh omrim chalon, there are those that say it means a window. V'yesh omrim even tov, and some who say it means a precious jewel. So this is not Rabbi Nachman's idea. This is a classic idea that I was familiar with.
And that's interesting that it's a jewel. The jewel is that which lets in light into.
Close. What the idea generally is that a chalon, a window, is something which what lets in light, and the classic rabbinic idea of the even tov, the precious jewel, in rabbinic idea is something which produces its own light. It's a supernatural idea.
I see.
It's a supernatural idea that one is producing of light. I like what you said though. Jesse says that it was something which reflected light because that
refracted.
Refracted.
Yeah.
Where
Like
you
a singular source comes in, but it comes out in
Because light comes
a
from,
ton of
the- from
different
the
Oh,
sun.
that's a beautiful
like the
idea.
70
That's
faces.
very nice. And that when I hear that, I think back to what we saw about the Shechina Malchut being no intrinsic color but reflecting, or I like more as refracting. I just want to say something I remember just now. My uncle, my mother's brother, who lives in Jerusalem, his last name and my mother's last name is Fenster. Fenster is German and Yiddish for window. So you might know the word defenestration.
Or fenestration.
Or fenestra. What is fenestration?
Fenestration is or glazing or windows, like openings of it.
So fenster, fenestrate.
Yeah.
And when he moved to Israel in the 70s, he thought, like many people that moved to Israel, he thought to change his last name to a more of a Hebrew, a Hebrew or Israeli type name, and he didn't, which he didn't do. But he told me once that when he thought to do that, he thought to do Sohar.
Cool.
So, which has this nice window meaning, which I think is really beautiful.
That'd be cool.
But I also really like Fenster, just because it's kind of unique. Just like Greenberg, which is a very unique, uncommon. Yeah, please.
Like just again, like
Yeah.
architectural thing. The window that's really close to the top, you can also call it a skylight. And
Yeah, is this
That's true, huh? Yeah.
do you read this as being right? This is how you make it sohar for daylight. In Hebrew, it's sohar taseh teva. Oh, interesting. Actually, in the Hebrew, it says is make it sohar for the ark. It doesn't say for daylight. This is an interesting translation. And then it just says where to put it. Put it ve'el ama techalena milamala. Right, and it should be a cubit from the top. It does sound like a skylight,
Yeah.
which makes sense if you're a floating ship in the water. So some of it obviously is submerged. So either it's a skylight or it's just high enough such that it's not submerged, which both would not provide you with light and would drown you. So it would not be very
It's
functional.
an awesome, utilitarian thing. But what's the jewel? What is the purpose of a jewel?
Yeah. So generally, right. All the midrash tells us is you have these two ideas. Either it's a light or it's a jewel, which my understanding always has been that it creates its own light. Though I like your read as well. And then generations of Jewish rabbis, sages, scholars, and Torah learners like ourselves have tried to give meaning. Well, what does that mean? So now we'll see what Rebbe Nachman is going to do with that.
When you talk about the ark and the window, it makes me think of Daniel. And Daniel opened his window and prayed toward Jerusalem. And the opposing forces saw him. And I think that in that instance he was thrown the lion's den. I'm not sure.
And by the way, that line in Daniel that it specifically says he prays by the window is the source for a Jewish law, which we have until today, that every prayer space is supposed to have a window,
That's interesting.
which is very interesting. And by the way, I totally didn't make this connection until just now. Last week we read about Abba Binyamin, who had said would make sure that his prayer was by his bed. Now, without getting too in the weeds on this, the Gemara, the Talmudic passage there contextually, is curious about Abba Binyamin's statement because it seems to imply on its face that he would pray sort of at his bed or even toward his bed. And they say, but you can't do that because you're supposed to pray in front of a wall traditionally. And so this now I'm realizing there's two somewhat obscure or faint or distant allusions now throughout this Torah to positions of prayer. One is window-based, one is wall-based, one which might have light coming in, one which might not be. That might be getting a little too, but those are floating around. He's certainly someone who's open to those kinds of things. Okay, what does he want to say? The difference between a window and a precious jewel is that a window has no light of its own. It is simply a medium for the light to enter through. But when there is no light, the window does not give light, right? If you're praying at night, or if there's a cloud covering the sun, or in Metairie, Louisiana, when there's a rainstorm, it gets very dark out. And at that point, if by a window, there's no light. Aval even tov, but a precious jewel, afil she'ein or mibachutz, hu me'er ba'atzmo. But with a precious jewel, even when there's no outside light, the jewel shines of itself. This seems to be like the traditional understanding, because the words are me'ir be'atzmo. It shines on its own. Me'ir is literally to give light, leha'ir, to illuminate. So too, there are people whose words are like a window, incapable of giving light on their own. So Rabbi Nachman wants to say that this is either like two types of people who are like windows or people who are like jewels, in that they reflect their own light or they bring light from outside. But some of the commentary here notes it's not necessarily two types of people. It's also ourselves at different times in our lives. There's times when we are window-like, right? We welcome external light, but when there is an external light, we're not really capable of bringing it ourselves. And then there's times in our life when we are an Even Tov, and we can shine both for ourselves and presumably for others that need us to do so. Now he's going to do a chutzpahdik thing. He's going to he's some holy temerity in what he's about to do. What is he about? Okay, at the top of page 95, do you see how it says Rashi explains? Mm-hmm. Some say a window and some say a precious jewel. This is a translation of the Hebrew yesh omrim, which literally means there are those that say. Now, this formulation of saying there's those that say A and there's those that say B is such a typical formulation in Jewish text and thought that you don't even think about it. What's an example in English? Some say this, some say that. It's like you don't even think about it. It's just how our language works. Rabbi Nachman is now going to actually find meaning in that phraseology. Yesh omrim, he's going to say, not just there are some that say, but rather there are those who, in the way they talk, you become a window. But there's other times when the way you talk makes you a precious jewel. And what's the talking here? Prayer. Meaning sometimes you pray in such a way that it turns you into a window. And sometimes you pray and speak in such a way that it turns you into a precious jewel. So what determines, according to this, how you are is how you speak. Yesh omrim, the type of talking you're doing. And what's going to distinguish which one is which? What's the type of talking? Shehakol lefi godel ha'emet. It depends on the degree of truth that you're bringing to your words. Ki ikar ha'or hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the essence of light is God. Ve'Kadosh Baruch Hu etzem ha'emet. God is the core and essence of truth. Ve'ikar hishtokakut shel Hashem yitbarach eino ela emet. And God's primary yearning is for nothing but the truth. God again, this is Rebbe Nachman at his best. He's constantly flipping the direction of our relationship. God is truth, but God yearns for truth. So the degree that we speak truth, we are bringing God in, and then we're radiating out. But he also said that it's about God radiating towards us. So these are all happening at the same time, which is true. I mean, right? That's the line in Tehillim, in Psalms, Ashrei 145. Karov Hashem l'chol karav. God is close to all who call out. L'chol asher yikru be'emet. God is close to us. We call out to God. God is truth. We call out to God in truth. God comes close to us. It's this very dialectical back and forth. There's a Kabbalistic idea of ratzo v'shov. Back and forth, back and forth.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
You started off by saying da.
Yeah, no.
No?
Yeah, no.
V'da.
That
It's tzivoy.
it's va.
Vit and no.
Oh,
Vit
it's
is
not
and.
da. It's not da. How do you spell it?
DA.
Well,
you do
it's
spell da.
it's
Okay.
Hebrew. Vit is and. Da. No.
Well, it's a. Oh, you're right.
No. It's the command. No. And know that, like know this. Understand this well.
There's
Da.
an interesting story I'll tell you. It doesn't really have to do with what's going on, so I won't hold up the class for it, but maybe I'll tell it to you later. There's an interesting story surrounding the word da and God.
All right.
Now, da'at would be knowledge, right?
Yes. Now it's all the same word. Exactly right. It's all the same root. Vizet. Okay. Now he's going to go back to the Noah story. So we're on the third paragraph on 94 and 95. El ama techalena milamala. So where did the tzohar go? You were supposed to finish it on ama, a cubit from the top. What's a cubit? It's loosely based. Your amma is your middle finger, and in one quick and dirty way to measure an amma is from the top of your amma, your middle finger, to here, which is why this is called an amma, because it's a cubit. My amma, I measured, is about 19 inches, and in modern Jewish law, where we actually you apply ammas, cubits to different things, that's the low end of what some say, but we'll also say it's up to 2 feet, according to one. Different rabbis have different. One says 19, one says 24.
Yeah, these specific dimensions are
Yeah.
interesting. Another part of Torah that comes out for me for that is the construction of the Holy of Holies, I guess.
Totally.
Like, like you remember how the math adds up in that construction? Really?
No.
Oh, they say that the distance from this wall to this wall is this many cubits,
Mhm.
and there's a thing in the middle, the arc.
It shouldn't really be
And
able to
it
fit.
actually it doesn't
yes.
like the number of cubits doesn't add
Yeah.
up. It's just like a funny
Yeah.
little game.
Yeah, so then there's these midrashim which have to sort of reconcile how that can be, and there's some are sort of naturalistic answers and some are miraculous
Yeah, it's
answers.
supernatural.
You know, we use these things all the time. The one that maybe I feel like comes up the most is the holiday of Sukkot, because a sukkah has to be a kosher sukkah. The huts have to be certain dimensions. They can't be taller than 20. A sukkah can't be taller than 20 cubits.
Okay.
So how tall is that? If it's 2 feet, so
30
40
feet.
feet. So that would be a very.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that actually you running into that as a problem. But it also can't be. There's a certain minimum height. So these things come up. But you're absolutely right. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, is all about this. And by the way, people find a lot of meaning in those things. There's a note here in note 39. I wasn't going to mention this. I wasn't aware of this. The dimension. Do you see it on your page? Note 39.
Mm-hmm.
The dimensions of Noah's Ark were 300 by 30 by 50 by 30. This parallels the Hebrew word for speech/tongue, which if you spell lashon, which is tongue or language, so every Hebrew letter has a numerical value. So gematria, good. So this is 30, this is 300, this is 50. So that's 380. Oh, 30, sorry. I have to add it up. It's about the dimensions of it. 350, 30. And we're talking about the teva, the ark, which is related to prayer, to speech. So that's happening. So, and you can go all deep into that. And there's some people who really, I find it somewhat interesting. There's some people who go very deep into it, and which is great. Which is great. And he's now going to do some wordplay, which I think we'll like. So let's look at this phrase. Ve'el ama techalena milamala. An ama, you should finish it up above. So he's really going to dive into those Hebrew words, which is why we're actually going to use this board today. Okay. First thing he notes is that the word finish it, which remember, we're talking about where the tzohar should have been placed up close to the ceiling. Finish it. He notes that word finish it, tichalena, from that root is vayachulu hashamayim va'aretz, to finish. Vayachal is to finish. But apparently there's a line in Samuel, the book of Samuel 2, chapter 13, where that same word, tichalena, vatachal, can also mean a longing, a yearning. So okay, hold on to that. And now he's going to bring it all together in a second. So first we know that now techalena can mean yearning. And now he's going to look at the word amma, which we've already talked about it, is cubits. Aleph, mem, hey, amma, okay? And what's he want to say? He's going to look at each of these letters. So he's going to say, hey, which is the gematria of 5. Aleph, bet, gimel, daled. Hey is 5, he wants to say. And what does he note? He says that amma alludes to the hey, 5 articulators. You all know what the 5 articulators are, right? No. Look at the back of your packets. The back of your packet is not from this book. It's from a different book. It is from this book. Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, which we cited last week or the week before, 2 weeks ago, where we cited the structure which connected the 12 tribes to the 12 months to the zodiac. So elsewhere in Sefer Yetzirah, chapter 2, part 3, there's a lengthy discussion in Sefer Yetzirah about the alphabets, the Hebrew alphabet. So here, it notes that, by the way, there's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. So this part of Sefer Yetzirah notes that the 22 letters can be divided up into 5 groups based on where in your mouth the pronunciation of the letters take place. So, Aleph, Chet, Hey, Ayin are guttural, which that really is true. Aleph, Chet, Hey, and Ayin, especially if you say Ayin like it's supposed to be said, which is really guttural. Yeah, it's like that. Ayin. If there's like a stop, there's a stop that's supposed to happen, which
that's cool.
It's tough to do. Then there's the palatals, those which happen in the in the palate. Gimel, Yud, Kaf, okay, that's happening there. Dalet, Tet, Lam, and Nud, and Taf come off your tongue. Then there's the dentals, Zayin, Samech, Sin, Resh, Tzadi come off the dentals. And the Bet, Vav, Mem, Pei come off your lips, the labial, apparently. Okay, fine. Point being, what's the Sefer Yetzirah doing? Saying that every letter comes from a different region, aspect of your mouth, voice, throat. There's different, if you look in the commentary, it notes that there's different ways of organizing that. One is that it's describing that in the order of where they come, like from back to front, back of house to front of house. Cool. Then there's it connects. There's a lot happening there. For now, all we need to know is Rabbi Nachman wants to say that the hey in Amma relates to the 5 articulators, the 5 types of ways that you can make sounds from your mouth.
The H is kind of silent in that word.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's taking the vowel from the mem.
Yeah.
Let me just see one thing. Yeah, sometimes if there's a
Which means it can't be guttural.
mapik in
we
there,
don't give it a chance to be guttural.
and not in this, not
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
But if there other
yeah.
times where there's a what we call a mapik in
Yeah.
it, then you would pronounce it like this, amma.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
which it sort of it gets an additional voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think only like when I'm reading Torah, I rarely am at a level where I'm doing. Plus, it would be very hard to notice it, and I'd have to go much more slowly to enunciate that. Anyway, but in this, where it comes up in the Torah here, it does not have that. So here, the 5 ways you can pronounce. Now, Aleph and Hey, Kalulim Me'esh Umayim. He says, the Aleph here stands for the word Eish, which is Aleph Shin. Eish means
Fire.
fire. So he wants to say this stands for fire. And Mem, Yud, Mayim, Mem, so feet. Mayim. Mayim is water. So now he's looking at the word Amma and saying it doesn't just mean cubic. It's a reference to fire, water, and the 5 sounds the mouth and throat can make. So he says, what is all of that? That is speech. He said, Rabbi Nachman is trying to claim that speech, and particularly prayer speech, you have to use fire, heat. What comes out of your mouth? Heat, moisture, and 5 different types of sounds. Do you remember in the first day that we were learning this text, he said you have to put all of your energy into not just the words that you say, but the letters. And he's really come back to that now. When you speak your prayer, your words, every letter has to be fire, water, and intention into whichever of the 5 sounds,
Mm-hmm.
Imagine for a second if when we spoke,
Yeah.
you put this much intention into every, not just word, halavai, please God, I'll ever get to a level where I can do this for one word. But for every letter, you have to put this level of energy in.
Your tongue would be on fire.
Please God, I'm trying to get to that level.
One thing that comes to mind too is the rhythm, like the way it would dictate your breathing.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's actually breathing as a form of meditation and prayer has been around for millennia. Something that I'm trying to get into as an adult. But if you were to really, I guess, think about how a sentence is really supposed to be said. I mean, and there's also trope. It's like sung every way. Then there's just something like it would have a sort of biological impact, I think, on your body.
It is not an accident
Yeah.
that those who have sought out ways in which meditation has a home in Judaism find it in Kabbalistic works. This is such a beautifully embodied way to think about just the language, which you think in America, like in English, or I grew up thinking that language is just form it's functional to portray meaning.
It's arbitrary science.
Yeah, but this is saying no.
Yeah.
This very much, Sefer Yetzirah and Judaism generally then says no. It's all meaningful down to the letter, down to where in your throat, which resonates and I think is beautiful. And that's a great way that it would. Let's try to go a little. We're getting there. We're almost there. I'm excited. Okay, top of page 96/97. Vizeh. So what does this mean? In other words, see to it that the words leave your mouth in truth. And then from above, God will long to dwell with you. And when God dwells with you, God will shine for you. Thus the initial letters. Now, guess what he drops this only now. That phrase we were just looking at, which is Amma, Ama tichalena milamala. Let me see if I can write all of this. Oh, not in script. Ama tichalena milimala.
ATM.
Yes, Aleph. The three opening letters are Aleph, Tav, and Mem, which spells Emet,
In a different
truth, in a different, yeah, true.
It's okay.
He's okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Truth. So this whole verse or phrase, which we've been exploring and really drilling down into, he now zooms back up and says, hey, guess what? The whole thing we were talking about, emet, truth, the whole time. Kamosha Katuv, as we say, and he quotes again the line, which I've come back to and he's coming back to, Karov Hashem l'chol karav. God is near to all who call to God, to all who call to God, be-emet, in truth. So now he's now darshaned, he's read or reread or understood the phrase as put a tzohar, an cubit from the top. He's reread or re-understood to mean use your language, your fire and water and 5 articulators, for lack of a better word, to instill with tichalena, longing. And if you do that, then it will go limala, up towards God. And then God will come down to you because what you've been doing is all emet. And then, now, let's do one more thing, 2 more things in the Noah story, because he's like, once we're in the Noah story, let's keep going. Because remember, the next thing it said was, put an entrance to the ark on its side. In Hebrew, petach hateva b'tzidat hasim. You know, guys, I can't believe I haven't noted this yet. This is my fault. The word for ark itself, is this ridiculous?
It's the same.
Is the same, teva, ark, is the same word as word. Tevot, word. Ark is word. So from the
Wait, where else is that word?
Like in the beginning of this Torah, 2 weeks, he hasn't quoted a verse where that's true, but it's just, that's true in Hebrew. Roshei Tevot. Tevot is the plural of Teva. The Roshei Tevot means an acronym. Rosh, the heads.
Right.
The heads of the words, the acronym.
How is it different from like a Devar?
In my general understanding, I would use the word Teva if I was more going to refer to like the words themselves, almost the shapes of the words on the page.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, if you're doing a sight test for someone, read for me these Tevot, these
wow.
words.
Okay.
Yeah. So now,
So where are we going to put a hole in our word?
good. Hainu, hateva hayotzeit be'emet. That is, the teva corresponds to the teva, the word that emerges in truth. This true word will put an opening for you in the darkness in which you are trapped. So the teva, the ark, has an opening, which is now meaningfully juxtaposed with the notion that your words make openings. You're putting truth into your words makes openings in the darkness. So the ark is floating. This relates both to what I think Jesse and Jacob described and alluded to. The teva, the ark, floats on the depths. It's a refuge, but also now your words make openings in darkness. And there's the light and dark, there's the refuge from the external, there's the depths, the flood waters, there's truth and falsity. I'm probably missing several.
That's, dude.
This true word will put, okay, and this is bitsida. Oh my God, this is amazing. The word, so now the word for in its side, the side of the ark, okay, was bit, which means in. Tsi, sorry, bitsi, da, in its side. By the way, this is a mapike. Bitsida. In its side, but he notes, this is the word for sad, okay? Sadi dalid is the word for side. In its side. But it's related etymologically to the next line, trapping. I.e., what is its side? The klipa, which is tzad tzayid, which traps prey, as is written describing Esav, the brother of Jacob, who it's described in Genesis, ki tzayid bepiv, the same sadi dalid. So it can mean in the side of the ark is now related to being trapped by klipa, trapped by negative forces. I think it's no accident he doesn't use the word Esav, the word of Esau, but I think it's in the English, but not in the Hebrew. And it's the editors are wise to do that, because what I think is happening is, remember, at the end of the last time we were here, we started talking about Jacob. And Jacob and Esau are, of course, considered are twins and are opposite sides of this thing. Jacob is the source, is the person who's able to bring the prayer energy together. But now Esau now is being understood as the dark side of that, the klipa, the negative energy, who makes it so that your prayers can't. It's dark. That's darkness. That's being trapped. That's being preyed upon. And again, I think it works on both levels. There's the internal sense of being in darkness, but there's also a trap is something you step into. So there's the internal and the external. Esav represents both of those, and Yaakov represents both of those as well. The ability for you to be successful, but also for someone else to help you, which we alluded to and we'll get to more next time.
It's interesting. It's interesting he
Yeah,
brings
please.
him up in all this about truth, because it seems like Jacob got the blessing from his father and the inheritance based off of, again, we had that conversation, off of trickery.
Related, I think, to what Jesse and Vincent noted. That also complicates our conversation about
That
truth.
is true.
Yeah, great point.
I have a
I hadn't
question.
thought about that. Yeah.
Why didn't Esau tell his father Isaac when he said, "Quick, my son, go and get me venison"? Then I'll give you the blessing. Why didn't Esau stand up for truth he met and say, "I gave the birthright to Yaakov"?
I would assume because the way, from what I understood, that he didn't worship the one God, and that he was a sly tongue. I don't know where I got that from, or sly or silver tongue.
That is, it's without getting too. Yeah, I don't know if we can open up that whole bag right now. There's so much to say. Well, one reason, I think, according to the Pashat Pshat, the simple understanding of the text, is Esav has despised his birth. He didn't think. Your question seems to assume that he would have thought it was valuable enough to tell his father, but it actually seems to be he didn't value it. It's such that it wasn't even necessarily worth for him to mention it. What I find more, not necessarily disturbing, but something I struggle more with is, we know that Isaac, it says Isaac loved Esav. Ki tzayid bepiv, specifically because he was a trapper and he brought meat for his father. And it was Rivka who loved Yaakov. And that, to me, that's that's complicated. That Isaac, so then he was fooled, but I don't like to think he was fooled. I mean, I think he loved him and he saw good in him and he loved him for what he was. And so anyway, but there's a lot that this brings up. Let's make an end run because we're almost done with this piece, and then we'll open it up for more conversation. Here we go. It's 97 paragraph from the bottom. At first, a person praying could not even speak because of the darkness surrounding him. But by emerging from the darkness and praying properly, the person is able to rectify the first, second, and third story. Remember, the ark has 3 stories, and we already talked about the 3 levels in the prior 2 weeks, i.e. the lowest world, and then the world of stars, and then the world of the intellect, which here seems to be equated with the sort of the godly world. So again, so it works so perfectly for Rebbe Nachman on every level. It gets back to what we've been talking about, that your prayers ultimately help infuse or radiate upwards into the 3 levels. And now there's a sort of epilogue to this piece. Ach efshar lehitpalel rak shalomed Torah. However, it is impossible to pray without studying Torah. So this is a new element, which he's really going to get more into in later parts of this Torah. That in order to start speaking, what we talked about all day today was truth. How to infuse your language of prayer with truth. So he's now adding at the very end that even to begin that process, you need some Torah on your side. And he quotes from Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, Ki lo am haaretz chasid, which I think I put on it's at the bottom of, it's number 30. An ignorant person cannot be pious. Uchtiv meisir aznu mishmo Torah gam tfilato toeva. And this is a very... This verse really works well for him. When a person turns his ear from hearing Torah, gam tfilato toeva. His prayer is an abomination. That's an important proof text for Rabbi Nachman because it combines or juxtaposes prayer with Torah. Meaning if you don't engage in Torah, doesn't matter how much truth you try to bring to your prayer, if you aren't connected on some level to Torah, doesn't mean you have to be the biggest sage. It means you have to have a relationship, an honest relationship with Torah. Then you're not going to be able to get started on this process. So,
what does Torah mean? The word Torah?
It can mean several things. It's a great question. Teaching, direction. There's some seems to maybe also be related to like shooting an arrow, which also is about direction.
What is the word that starts with the Y, yara, that's associated with Torah? I think that has to do with the arrow thing.
Yeah, it's same thing. But I thought you were gonna same idea.
But it's also the arrow thing. Alludes to the skill that's in Homer. He has to shoot the arrow through all those pinholes, and it's a mastery skill. And
by the way, interestingly, one of the words for sinning is missing the mark.
Right, missing the mark.
That's chet, is to be off. So which is a very obviously beautiful and the way the tshuva, which is to return, is to return, that works very nicely. So it's to get back on the mark.
And God made repentance before the foundation.
Yes, exactly right. God makes the solution before the problem. So let's just quickly summarize. We know the importance of prayer and energy, and we know there's these different paths of it, and you need this energy in your life for everything you need, but it's hard to pray because of klipot, which can be internal or external, so you find yourself in darkness, which prevents you from connecting, and the way out is through truth. And he used this beautiful and brilliant analysis of Genesis chapter 6 of really just 3 lines, but was encompassed so much about the ark. The ark can be and again, there's all these layers of meaning. It can be refuge. It can be not on steady ground, which is an image that you said that I really like. it's above that which is submerged. It's above the depths. It's a place of light. It's a place of connection. You have to put truth into your words. And then he concluded at the very end that even the prior basis that you need is Torah, which we'll get back to a little bit later. And that is, we're really making great progress. That is the third section of Torah 9. And there are 6 sections, but the sixth is like a paragraph long. So there's really 5 main ones. So we're doing great. And I think this has been our third session. And I will conclude probably it may be just 2 more sessions, but if need be, 3.
And then we'll start the next one, right? The next Torah.
The next Torah. I have been enjoying these. I've been getting such life from this Torah and from these limudim that I would happily.
I think you are at
Keep
your
going.
best teaching this.
Thank you. Well, I clearly.
Not kidding. I mean, it's obviously something you really connect
I
with.
really connect
That
with
really
it.
shows. Yeah.
So I would love to, and I'd have to. We'll have to figure out what the next one will be. One of the things I like about this one is how many different forms of sort of pedagogically the different ways he is teaching us in this Torah. There's what we did today. Just look at the board. In the letters and the gematria and the Roshei Tevot, the letters and switching around, that's a type. There's the emotive type. There's obviously all the Kabbalistic Zohar Talmud. There's personal prayer life. There's textual analysis. So be interesting to think about if we want to do a similar one or a totally different.
I was just thinking, like, as we came
Please.
to this Torah thing at the end,
Yeah.
before when I was saying what I said about how if you say the words properly, it will sort of dictate a rhythm for your breathing.
Mhm.
But were we talking about just saying words like prayers with intention, but not necessarily reading them off like a page before? And this would be different if you do it from Torah, then you're kind of reading it.
It seems like the Torah does the same thing, right? Because I assume you're referring to like a mantra. Buddhists will get into a mantra, and its Om is all about the sounds you make, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does seem, and again, I don't know, but it seems like the Hebrew language and the Torah itself is written in that same way.
Yeah.
When I hear it sung in the synagogues, that's a specific, unique sound that they want you to emit to God.
Mhm.
That's, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That whole thing is.
I guess I was wondering though, like in the earlier part, right before this end though, where it says it comes from Torah, were we all imagining like that when we say our words with intention, that we were saying it just like speaking from the heart, or were we looking at a page of Torah and like sort of reading it word for word?
Don't you think it's a little bit of both?
Okay, I was just wondering.
What do you think?
Honestly, I was thinking about Torah the first time, but yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out.
I think that I have 2 answers.
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to do here strategically, or is part of his flow of argument,
Mm-hmm.
is obviously today was about truth. He wants you to connect with the truth. But there's a problem, which is that this is a world of, sometimes it's called Olam HaSheker, the world of lies.
Wait, I really like the postmodern term "hall of mirrors." Right?
You
So,
can't find
No.
stable ground, which goes exactly to your notion of an ark on water. So what I think Rabbi Nachman does at the end is says, well, there's one thing that our tradition believe. Where do I know I can find truth with a capital T, Emet with a capital Aleph? The Torah.
Yeah.
We take the Torah to be Emet.
Yeah.
So if I have nothing else in the world I can rely on, I can open up and read Torah. By the way, I think when he says Torah here, he might be referring to the 5 books of Moses, Chumash. He might be referring to Tanakh, all of the Old Testament. I think he can be referring to Talmud, he can be referring to Midrash. I don't think that matters as much to him as long as it is part of our tradition that you can say, I'm connecting to, and also I don't think he, as I said, he doesn't say you need to know the following things or you need to have certain level of literacy. You just have to be connected, honestly. I don't think he would say, you can open up a page, read, and then be, oh, I'm good to go. You have to, as I said what I meant. You have to be in an honest relationship with Torah at whatever level you are at, which is a level where you're trying to engage with it and learn it and struggle with it and grow in it. But now that I've said that, it's interesting to know, and Matthew and Jacob, you both, I think, kind of picked up on this on some level. Rebbe Nachman famously, it's known about him that he said and believed and advocated for, he would say, even if you do not understand a word of Torah, of Hebrew, you should, but let's say for a moment you can read Hebrew, but you don't know a word of what it means. He says you should open up some Torah and read it. And he says if you can't read Hebrew, you should listen to it being said. He seemed to believe, and this also, so this complicates it, that there is value and on some level truth that can be communicated subliminally. Yeah.
It's
Without
ingrained in us, though.
prefrontal cortex, it will impact you. It will seep in even if you don't understand it intellectually. And then I heard someone say, a teacher of Rabbi Nachman say, and this takes it really to a bit of a radical extreme that I feel less, up until now I can hold, but this I feel a little less comfortable with, that if you can't do any of those things, proximity to the book itself. Osmosis, proximity.
Now we're getting into Taoist.
But, I guess on some level I do believe it. For some people, and I've done this, I think I did this for one of your births, there's an idea I heard once that a woman who's giving birth should have, and we've done this for both of our kids, you should have a book by a Hasidic rabbi named Eli Melech of Lezhensk in the room with you. Wow. And Lezhensk is a town where my mother's father's family is from, and I just kind of well, it can't hurt. So we've done that, and I think I gave it to you guys for, maybe for, I don't know. But anyway, friends, it's an honor and a pleasure. Until next week.
Thank you.